So, Lucita, first of all, thank you for giving us this opportunity to have a dialogue with you. Let me start the conversation by asking you to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit more about who you are, what you do at RGE.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased to have this conversation with you. So I'm Lucita Jasmin. I'm the Director of Sustainability and External Affairs of the April Group. April is one of the business groups within the RGE umbrella. RGE is a resource-based conglomerate with businesses in Indonesia, China, Brazil, Canada, and Spain. April Group is one of the largest producers of fiber-based products. So this would include pulp, paper board for packaging, and also viscose for clothes. We source our material from 100% plantation wood. We have a sustainable forest management policy in place since 2015. My role is to be the steward of the policy. I make sure that it's actually implemented. I've been in the company since 2015. Before that, I spent 7 years in Nairobi, Kenya, with the United Nations Environment Program as the head of strategic comms in that organization.
Brilliant, and I love how you explain your role as being a steward. I love that part of how you articulate it. But tell me, sustainability is an existential challenge at this point. Whether you look at it from an E standpoint or an S standpoint. In a world where sustainability is going to be a bigger challenge, how do you look at the organization's role in terms of profitability and growth, balancing that with sustainability?
So I've always thought of the notion of balancing as looking at sustainability and profitability as two different things that you need to balance, right? Whereas I think the direction that we're trying to do here is an integration of the two, where we do not separate sustainability from the business strategy for growth. We take it seriously. We do recognize that there are negative impacts, right? And that is where sustainability becomes a serious concern. So with the negative impacts, we mitigate by having policies and, of course, initiatives in place to make sure that we are able to look after whether this is an environmental impact or a negative social impact. But at the same time, right now, our direction is to be much more forward-looking and much more proactive in setting that agenda, which is why within RGE, most of the business groups already have our 2030 agenda in place. So the idea is really to make sure that we are one of the drivers of growth and that we are actually being used as a strategy for driving growth within the organization. And what has happened is that there's been a transformation within the group. Many of the new projects, if not new businesses, are actually along the lines of sustainability already. Coming out of the April example, now moving to Brazil with one of our sister companies, Bracell, we just actually completed the construction of the largest and greenest pulp mill in Brazil, which is 100% reliant on bioenergy. So it's zero fossil fuel-based production facility in Brazil. Our wood fiber LNG, or liquefied natural gas facility in Canada, is now completing the construction of a facility that is also going to be the first net zero emission. And by that we mean the facility is going to offset its emissions through credits that are bought from the First Nations communities. So as you can see, there is also the strategy of bringing the local communities along. And then from the oil palm business of RGE, looking at the byproduct of oil palm, now there's a new partnership in Spain that's being established on sustainable aviation fuel. So as you can see, now even from April, for example, whatever growth we do has to do with downstream diversification. So what that means is that we're able to grow the business by creating higher value-added products without increasing our footprint on the land. So sustainability is not just informing the strategy, but actually really driving it at this point.
And I'm sure this journey of balancing purpose and profit is not a rosy journey. So it's a hard journey.
It is.
And it gets harder because of the narratives that are playing around you. So tell me a little bit more about how do you balance purpose and profit as you drive the business to the next level? What are some of the big challenges, and how have you or the organization overcome these challenges in the past?
We're fortunate because this is championed all the way from the shareholder level. And I think that makes a huge difference. And then, of course, from the shareholders, it cascades to the senior leadership, and then eventually we foster this all the way down to the managers and the rest of the people within the organization. So in effect, it's becoming much more of a culture. It being a driver of cultural transformation, I think. Really, what the biggest challenge for us is really managing the internal change process, right? Because it really means embedding it in operations and then changing people's mindsets and behavior, thinking of sustainability, not just something that they need to do or a constraint to how they do things, but actually something that can help them do things better. So I think it's really part of the whole maturity process, right? You start with sustainability as being seen as compliance. Second is, of course, being really externally driven by pressures from stakeholder groups, saying we need to do this so that we don't become campaigned on. Right. But then eventually you start seeing that, oh, actually there are some efficiencies involved. Because if we do an energy efficiency audit and we do realize that we can save on costs and we can improve the use of energy within the company, then sure, then there are some efficiency returns that we can register as well. But then eventually they start seeing sustainability as enabling market access and enabling financing with banks. Because a big part of our work as a sustainability team is actually engaging with the customers and with the banks on due diligence, right? And beyond due diligence, actually really fostering relationships. So from access to banking deals and also to markets, eventually they see that, oh, we can create value because now there are products that we can look at product development from a sustainability lens. And that's when we're seeing, oh, paperboard, because it gives us more value. We don't need to increase our fiber supply coming out of it. And by the way, we're also then enabling this transition from fossil fuel-based products to renewable, biodegradable products. So then it becomes about value creation. And then once you get there, then eventually it's about, well, actually, now that we're seeing it, it's doing a lot of good for a lot of other stakeholders within the ecosystem. Our bankers are happy, our customers are happy. And if you're able to translate this to benefits for the communities, and the communities are happy. So it is a process. It's not something that you go from here to say, I'm going to do good for the collective, right? It's something that you need to navigate. And part of our role is really to chart that pathway. It's not a straight line, but it's about having a clear line of sight in terms of that's where we're going. We could meander at some point, but at the end of the day, we'll end that way. So it's about shepherding that process within the organization.
Of course, and social value creation is never a straight line,
Exactly.
right? It's a journey, a tough one at that. I'm glad you talk about paperboard, because I want to ask you about one of the recent announcements around RGE committing to about $2.2 billion in a paperboard industry or factory in Sumatra. Talk a little bit more about the motivation there, and what is the plan, and how are you going about accomplishing that plan?
This is part of our growth strategy, which is focused on downstream diversification and creating higher value added products. What actually this is, the big change that's going to come from this is that we're getting closer and closer to the end consumers. Whereas before we're producing pulp, paper, and eventually selling to distributors, but now we're going to come even closer to the consumers. And this would bring us really much more to the front of what sustainability means to the broader base of our stakeholders, right? So it's also ensuring that however we grow the business, it's still within that same commitment. We're no longer going to deforest. So this land bank that we have is really what we're going to be producing much more fiber from. And we have a target, as I mentioned, of about growing our productivity by 50% from the same land bank. So regardless of how we grow the production capacity, we're always going to draw from the same footprint. So it's downstream diversification and keeping to our commitments, and then at the same time being part of this transition from fossil fuel-based products to biodegradable and renewable packaging.
So Lucita, talk about yourself as an individual, as a leader. What motivates you? What drives you? What are the values that keep you going?
So I was having a conversation about this yesterday with a colleague that I've been working with for quite a number of years now, to say, so, hey, what's keeping us going, right? Because it's been quite challenging as a role. And to be honest, the level of challenge and the level of engagement and intellectual stimulation from a professional standpoint, right, that we're getting in this role right now is really just remarkable, right? Because it challenges you in many ways. Number one, it's about, of course, coming up with for the intellectual capacity to come up with solutions and to engage with business leaders and say, how do you accept sustainability and how do we continue to drive sustainability within the organization? Then, of course, there is the matter of being able to engender championship also among different levels of the organization and ownership as well. Because sustainability is not just the job of the department. In fact, if it's seen as the job of the department, then we would have failed, right? Because really we need to bring it out to the rest of the organizations. So it's really requiring multiple skills on many fronts. And at the same time, of course, I think it's fulfilling, right? Because you know you're making a change. And you are seeing really the transformation that's happening. We have a voice, we're being heard, and we get the support of the shareholder because he's championing this. So we are empowered in what we do. And I think that is really quite remarkable for an organization. We are never short of resources. We are indeed well-resourced in terms of the work that we do, which speaks to the kind of support that sustainability has within the organization. In terms of values, I think there's a lot of alignment, right? RG as a company has articulated a set of values: complementary team, ownership, integrity, continuous improvement. But from my perspective, the ones that really resonate are, of course, number one, integrity. If you do not have that, then this job of actually building trust with stakeholders and getting the stakeholders to give you that safe space to say, okay, we will see whether we'll give you some time to implement, and we'll see whether you'll be true to your word or you'll be able to implement your policy or your commitment. That is something that takes a lot of time to build on. So integrity is very important in terms of delivering on what you say and just being able to hunker down and say, we're going to focus on work. There's a lot of things going on in the sustainability space. Every day there are new frameworks. Every day there's noise being created in terms of, the levels of scrutiny that, that we are subject to. But I think it's also about the ability to just focus on what matters. And what matters is really, what is the business strategy? What is the purpose of this organization? What is the business strategy that's going to deliver that? And which stakeholders or rights holders matter to us? Where is that alignment? So being able to focus on that is also quite important. So number one, I think, is the alignment of purpose. Number two is the alignment of values within the organization. It takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of dedication. But it also takes a lot of support from the team, right? There's no I in sustainability. I guess that's the one thing that I realize and that I always advise our colleagues, because it takes a collective. It's a huge initiative, and it's definitely way beyond our department to be able to accomplish any of our sustainability commitments at this point.
Brilliant. Love the expression, there's no I in sustainability, which is so true. So also, finally, talk a little about being a senior women leader in a male-dominated industry. How's the journey been? And do you see this happening more as you look around, or you are one of the few who's made a success out of this field?
No, I do see a lot of women leaders in sustainability and in many other areas, of course, of the corporate world. I think, well, number one, given the existential challenges that we're facing right now, is it a leadership opportunity or is it a leadership imperative, right? Is there still a choice there where everybody's telling us that there's urgency to act? Now, is this particularly an opportunity for women? Yes, but at the same time, really it's an imperative for everyone, right? So whether you're a male leader or a female leader, then you just need to embrace that imperative and that responsibility to respond to that. Now, I'm fortunate to be in an organization where everything is performance-based, and I see that, right? So whether as a woman or just as another member of senior management, I'm given a voice. And I also do not expect that because I'm a woman, that I'd have any different treatment from the rest of the colleagues. If someone gets shouted out for something, I could fully expect that at some point, if I do commit anything that's worth being called out, I'd be called out in the organization, if in the same way. So it's that. At the end of the day, for me, excellence knows no gender, right? So this is the playing field, whether it's much more difficult for us or not. If we're seen as we're having the ability to or the willingness to deal in that kind of a difficult situation, I think we get even more respect as a woman.
And you're right, meritocracy is the key to success at an organizational level. So Lucita, first of all, thank you for this opportunity, for having this dialogue with us. I really enjoyed the conversation, and you have a wonderful rest of the evening.
Same. Thank you so much. Thank you for this opportunity.